the general feeling from people, you're getting text DMs, I'm getting text DMs. I got a text. I had a thread going with a buddy who was just that Niners last drive was just furious. Not even a Niner fan. He's like, I don't watch the Niners a lot, but why are they so boring on offense?
Guy, I was screaming at my TV at a principle of you have an all-star team on offense, and I get you have wet dreams to run plays. I'm not even trying to be funny. I mean, I have never seen a modern day coach love running as much, especially a younger coach. He's addicted to running, guy. He's addicted to running the ball, which I'm all for, because there is an element of toughness that comes along with that. Like I like that to be the ethos of your team. I have no problem with it. I'm a big Jim Harbaugh guy. Same thing. He's wired like that. I think Bill, deep down, like I have no problem with running it when you can establish and shove a guy around. They had clear mismatches on the outside. Like they can't cover Brandon Ayuk. Like they can't cover Jawan Jennings. Like you can go 4 or 5 wide. I don't know. You have this guy named George Kittle who's a pretty good pass catcher. Like you can put him in the slot. You can spread it out and not run like 7-step drops and not do like an Andy Reid just pass it all the time offense. But it was pretty clear that like you were going to be able to throw it around, get rid of the ball quickly. And like to Kyle, that means those quick screens, which I am okay with doing it every once in a while. I thought he fucking held on to those things a little too hard, especially when Jimmy was not comfortable. Like the ball was kind of flying on him. It's borderline embarrassing sometimes how unwilling he is to just call a pass play. And then he gets in positions where he doesn't have a choice. And then it just works. It's like, Kyle, you've drafted these guys and paid these guys a lot of money. Why? Because they're really good. I saw somehow, it was on Instagram. Daniel Jeremiah tweeted it out. And it came on my Instagram feed that he said, I've never, because obviously he does the Chargers broadcast. So he studied the 49ers. And he's like, in all my years around the NFL, almost 2 decades, I've never seen a team run so violently after the catch. He's like, it is. They're the most violent after the catch team I think I've ever seen. Well, throw them the ball, you know? And I don't, like those screens, he's just addicted to that fucking play. How often is that play honestly going to work? And you have one of the great screen players of all time in Deebo Samuel. Can you just run him like a slant? Can you just run him a quick out? Like that serves the same purpose. And you know what? It just gets him one-on-one with the guy instead of like, well, if Juszczyk slips or if Trent Williams can't get there, then he's got to make 3 guys miss and break a tackle. Like I just don't see why you can't run some basic pass plays when you have an all-star team of pass catchers.
Well, I thought it was funny at the very beginning of the game when Melissa Stark said, Christian McCaffrey got in the huddle and said, I feel like I'm at the Pro Bowl. Well, early on, the Niners were kind of playing like Pro Bowl offense where you got all these stars. And this is what I've been saying for a few weeks. There is only one ball. And I know, and I lost the comment here. Somebody made the comment, which is a good comment. Like the Chargers were very depleted on their defensive front in particular. And that's the type of team that you want to attack with the run. Somebody else said, well, they're breaking off. McCaffrey's breaking off 7-8 yard runs. Well, by the end of the day, McCaffrey averaged under 3 yards a carry, as it turned out. I do think fundamentally there's something to be said for the Chargers are very depleted on defense. You want to shove the ball down their throat. I get that. I agree with that.
And they were doing it. I mean, you can do both.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about here is not just this game. It's the big picture. It's that it is not an automatic that with all these star players, the 49ers offense is dynamic, right? And in the red zone, especially when it's harder to just pound the rock, as we saw multiple times today, they did not have a lot going on in the red zone. Now, they should have scored that touchdown. Ayuk, I think Ayuk actually was going to the ground. I think he thought it was going to be a low throw, and it came up high on him. It was a good throw by Jimmy. I'm not blaming him, but I think that's what happened on that play. That should have been a touchdown. But their inability to score touchdowns in the red zone sometimes is, I think, the most infuriating part, especially when it's on that first drive and it's, this whole, this might be the best drive of the game for them. So,
because what usually happens, run, and then he passes on 3rd down, right? That happens a lot.
Although I know, early, this isn't the final numbers. I did chalk it up near the end of the game. They were 8 first down passes, 8 second down passes, and 7 third down passes. So that's not all of Jimmy's throws because he made 28 throws, and that is 16 plus 7 is 23. But for a portion of the game. That's it. Because my feeling was they were only throwing it on third down, which was not necessarily the case. We'd have to look at the downs and distances. But ultimately, the bottom line was to score 22 points and to really struggle to score 22 points and to struggle to score touchdowns. They're just going to have to be better than that on offense if they're going to actually be a team that can win playoff games this year.
Well, I would go in reverse. I would throw the ball on first down. And then, if you're going to hit half those passes, you're going to be in conducive plays, 2nd and 2. Sometimes you'll just get a first down. It'll give you some breathing room. Even when the Chargers are losing guys left and right. I mean, it felt like the 49ers, right? The amount of guys that they were losing, and clearly they came into this game with a lot of guys out. They still have NFL players on their team, like guys from the practice squad, guys they've claimed.
Like the Colts.
Yeah. So when they know you're going to run the ball, my mom knows you're going to run, they're going to run, everyone listening knows they're going to run, they can just tell everyone to trigger on the snap toward the line of scrimmage, right? And to me, I was thinking a couple times when that was happening time after time on the last several drives, you got this $15 million tight end, or you got this guy named Debo. What if you ran like a stutter and go? What if you just sent him down the seam? What if you just had a curveball? But Kyle, why do I even think that? Because I know, nope, we're going to run it. It's like, holy fuck. And I understand, like, you want to take advantage of their weakness, but aren't you kind of playing chess too? Like, if they're selling out and you have back-to-back drives of them just selling out, why don't you hit a curveball? Just take a shot. And when I say a shot, I don't mean like 7-step drop, throw a go route. I just mean something, just instead of, he's going to pass it. What's he going to do here? Fucking jailbreak screen to McCaffrey or Debo. It's like, it's coming.
Yeah, the part of it, I mean, being
I thought Kyle had a shitty night. I thought he had a really shitty night.
Being in 2nd and long for them is a bad place to be. I think he really despises, right, not getting anything on first down, or obviously negative yardage on first down. But
and we're not arguing. I mean, they're 1-2 punch right now with those running backs are awesome. Like, I'm pro running the ball, but Kyle's inability to, like, hey man, you can just go like 3 straight plays, 4 or 5 wide, and those running backs can catch. Like, they can be part of it. That's the thing. It happened a couple times and it worked. A couple must downs. What happened? They threw it to like their 4th, 5th weapon, Jawan Jennings, who looks like, if you just watched the NFL today and you went, he's a $10 million guy, people would believe you. Like, if you didn't know anything, the way he looks, the way
he is on third. He is on 3rd and 7.
I just, but for them to win big, you just or maybe they're just going to play in this game every single week.
Well, that's the fear. That's the fear, is that they're going to play in that game every week, and that 16-13 is just. That was the drive to me. 16-13, it was just about trying to end the game. It was like they were trying to get a 7-minute drive to end that game, or a 6-minute drive to end that game. It ended up being a 4.5-minute drive, and they kicked the field goal on the goal line, or they lost a yard on the goal line and then kicked the field goal. But it felt like the point of that drive, number one, was to kill the clock. But killing 4 minutes when there's 6 minutes left, when the other team has 3 timeouts and they have Justin Herbert, albeit he doesn't have, his weapons, what did you really accomplish if you kill the clock and they have 2 minutes for a real NFL offense with 3 timeouts? You didn't kill the clock. So you spend 4.5 minutes trying to kill the clock. You end up kicking a field goal. Now, I mean, as it turned out, it worked out, but that to me was the most frustrating drive. The mindset was, let's kill the clock with a 3-point lead and 6 minutes left. When the mindset should be, let's score a touchdown and end the game.
But even if you think back to early in the game, the first couple drives, I think the second drive, Ayuk fumbles. It was clear. It's like, I don't think they're going to be able to cover this guy. And in fairness, I don't know if you've watched Ayuk the last month, and Kyle even talked about it. He's been playing the best football of his life. The eye test, the stat test, he fucking looks awesome. Feed him the rock. Like, or just keep using him throughout first, second, and third downs.
Yeah. I did think, like, he ends the game with 6 catches for 84 yards. He probably felt like, but like Kittle had 2 catches or 1 catch, 2 targets, 1 catch. At this point, comparing Kittle and Kelsey,
they don't play the same. They don't play the same game.
It's like comparing a defensive tackle and a corner. It's like they're not playing the same position, And it's not that is not a negative on Georgia. It's just they are not to compare those two guys.
But
It's
as
like it's like saying they're two great defensive players, and one of them is Warren Sapp and one of them is Deion Sanders.
so it's like, okay, they're missing defensive tackles, and in theory, you should be able to run it right down their throat nonstop.
Yeah.
Well, they also can't cover 11. So you can get like, if he had 9 or 10 catches, you're going to have so many more first downs. Like ultimately, it's not very likely you're going to get a first down on a 1st and 10 run, right? That is a huge bonus. But in Kyle's mind, I think he thinks that's like more likely. I don't know.
But I mean, I think he just wants to take, if he'll go take 8 yards on a first down run, right?
I just can't get over how conservative he is with the weapons he has. That's what's pretty wild. I would get it if he's playing with. Can you imagine if he played a game with what the Chargers just played a game with? I don't know what he'd do.
Oh, I do.
He just handed to Eckler all the time?
It'd look the same. That's the point. It would look that is the point, John. It would look the same, right?
That's a He's got to be better.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be running back, McCaffrey throwing the ball on some throwback pass. It's not about doing crazy shit necessarily. But in theory, somebody should be open because they're all so hard to cover, and this defense is selling out, for the run.
The other thing is, at this point in time,
to me, wide open out of nowhere. Where was that play?
Well, to me, early in a season, every team starts like your team doesn't carry over. So last year, just because they made the NFC Championship game and they were tough as shit, they're not guaranteed to be the same thing, right? It's every coach says that. There's turnover with players. There's new guys that start. But like, it's pretty clear, like the team's tough. Like no one has any qualms. Like, do they got guys you want to go to war with? They do. We know it. Like no one questions like, can you get in the trenches with these boys? Fuck yes. Okay. The goal now should be kicking ass and taking names. No, it's like, we got to establish. No, you don't. Like, you're tougher than the Chargers. That before the game is even snapped, they got like 3 guys that can hang with your toughness. Khalil Mack, Derwin James, like Herbert. Other than that, you're tougher than them, okay? So how can you get to like 30-plus points where they can't sniff that instead of like, let's just hold on for dear life with our 19? It's like,
exactly.
Oh my God, this is crazy. How does he, Kyle, you want to know how you went from a 40-year-old to now being 43 and looking like you're 56? Because you're playing like this. Fuck, Andy's looked the same now for like 7 years. He's having a blast. Like, you can throw some touchdowns and everyone breathes a little bit easier. Wasn't the Rams game fun? Let's just score some touchdowns. Not the old-fashioned way of just running up the gut. They don't see this coming. Let's hit the edge. No, Kyle, they do. No one disputes you're not the undisputed run game king in the NFL. Like, you got all these markets cornered. Team's tough as shit. You guys got a great run game, but there are times in the game like they can't cover some of these guys. You can throw them the ball past the line of scrimmage, and they did it a couple times, and it worked easily. I mean, what would Justin Herbert have done? Can I just borrow Brandon Ayuk? Can I just borrow Juwan Jennings? Kyle's like, no, I need him to run block
or have 2 level, or have 2 Austin Ecklers like you guys have, right? We got 2 of them. They got the 2 of them. Plus they got Debo. And I'm not blaming Kittle, by the way. Like he's got to help block, clearly.
No, it's his role.
Like they need that. I don't know if you saw the clip, McGlinchey on the 3rd and goal, but just Jeff Schwartz can break it down. I guess I missed. I didn't block anybody, and his guy made the play. And then the Niners kicked the field goal. So, and I don't,
is it the end of the one that got to 22, like the final drive before they kicked?
Yeah, where Elijah Mitchell went down that play.
Yeah. So you're saying that guy came in and flipped?
Yeah,
he did kind of trip on that, but you're saying McGlinchey didn't touch a soul.
Well, I think McGlinchey maybe he did trip. I only saw a clip just real quick, so I'm not into.
I thought Elijah kind of tripped, but
I did too.
I understand. Like at that point in time, you're playing the clock. There were times on previous drives where they just could have passed. And when I say pass, I don't mean like 20 yards down the field. You can run just like quick out routes that gain you basic yards, and you have the greatest after the catch guys in like modern history. Like 4 of them on your team, including the running backs.
I know you're not criticizing the last drive, but I do think there's a fundamental It's like in Kyle, if you let Kyle Shanahan rework an NFL game, he would change it from a 60-minute game to a 50-minute game and cut 10 minutes off the fourth quarter and just play the first 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. Right? Like they so often play in games where it feels like they are just trying to get to the finish line with a 3-point lead. Like, all right, we took a 3-point lead. Let's just nurse this sucker to the finish line. Like driving a car that's on E and you're just throwing it in neutral every time you're coming down a hill to try and make it home. It'll be a great story. We pushed the gas tank to the limit, everybody, but didn't even fill up once. That's the feeling you get, right? A lot. And that to me is where we talk about that late drive. It felt like it was about killing the clock when it was too much time. Just go score a touchdown. That will end the game. That will end the game. So when Eric on the stream says, why is every Niner game a roller coaster? I think it's partly that it's like get a lead and then just nurse that bad boy all the way to the end. And it puts the defense in these spots where all of a sudden they're like, all right, fellas, 2 minutes left. The other quarterback's got 3 timeouts. Don't let him get a field goal.
Well, you know the drives where a team has one less than their full arsenal of timeouts. So it's like you get to that third down, you're like, well, we run it, take 40 seconds off the clock. Let's say if it's like, at the 2-minute warning, get them down at minimum to 120. They got no timeouts. Or do we go for the kill shot? The Niners weren't even in that position. It was like they got all their timeouts, Kyle. So they're going, unless you score, they're calling timeout. They're getting the ball back. And I don't think it even crossed his mind to pass. Like it's not even that's not the way he's wired. Like I think Sean Payton's, the Andy Reid's, hell, even Pete Carroll, I think it would cross their mind like, let's get super ballsy. Because I told you before we, I think, hopped on, Collinsworth, when they got stuffed on the Mitchell play and they basically went from the 1 probably to like the 2.5.
Yeah.
He's like, I wonder if Kyle would have gone for it. And you said, I bet he would have ran the quarterback sneak. And maybe, but I think in his mind, I get that extra field goal. They got to score a touchdown. My defense has been playing great. Like, I would have bet against him going for it. Now, if he did go for it, I would have bet on the quarterback sneak, not some crazy play. But the Kyle Shanahan that I've been watching now for whatever year he's in, 5.5, like it's pretty clear the way he's wired and what he leans. And there's a difference of like going forward every once in a while, like in nut cutting time, in a tight game, in a a 2 or 3 point game or a 3-point game to make it a 6 or go for it. Like I think he would have kicked the field goal there. I think he would have kicked the field goal there if he just would have been stuffed at the 1 yard line. If it would have just not gone back.
Yeah. He might have. I'm not
based on his you'd say based on his history, he'd be more inclined to kick the field goal than roll the dice. Even though 100%. Collinsworth, like if he rolls the dice, so what? You give him at the 1 yard line. They got no timeouts.
It's not totally illogical to kick the field goal. I get it. You make them drive the field, score a touchdown. They have struggled to do that. I understand it. But to me, part of it is what you just said. Like you're just going to put them in the end zone where they just were. And Justin Herbert was under pressure on every play. I mean, they did bring a lot of heat in the second half of the game and put him in a lot of bad spots. But you're right. I mean, history tells us that he would have kicked that field goal if that ball was on the 1-inch line. I would have liked to have seen him go for it, try and score the touchdown. A lot of Twitter was very mad at him, John. I'm here to report to you, but you can't really use that to gauge anything because I think a lot of people had the Niners -7 and really wanted them to kick to score the touchdown, not kick the field goal. So I think that's probably why one of my buddies was texting me so angry. I think he probably had the Niners -7. But take that with a grain of salt. But the sneak they are incredibly good at the sneak. They are Jimmy. You watched some bad sneaks today. I watched Josh Allen, the Bills, struggle to sneak. The exchange part of it's difficult, but they're obviously very good at that. So it wouldn't have surprised me if they had gone for it in that spot.
For them to win a Super Bowl, whether it's with Jimmy Garoppolo, whether it's with Trey Lance coming back, whether it's when they signed Tom Brady this offseason, he's got to be aggressive. That is the only way to win it. It's the only way to consistently win big games. Like you're not always going to have some crazy punt block in a game where your offense is shitty, right? I mean, sometimes you got to put your nuts on the table. And it just feels he is always inclined to not do that. And I think he's just always going to lean with the defense. And as we've seen going back to their, probably their second worst loss of the season, maybe the worst loss, the Denver game, he played that way. And even Russell Wilson, who was having probably the worst season of his career, I haven't looked at his numbers. I mean, they scored 10 points today. What did he do against them? Pulled a Russell Wilson drive out of the hat and beat when their defense was fully healthy at the time and drove right down the field because football's hard. And the one thing I do agree with the analytical elites is like they just tend to be more aggressive. Like I'm cool with taking field goals in certain spots, like Sean McDermott not taking the field goal up 10 when they're not doing shit, and then he goes for it and they throw a pick. Like that was a devastating momentum transition. But in a position where it's like, Kyle, you can stick a knife in their throat. And even if you don't, even if you miss their throat, the defense is right there and they're pinned up against it. He's just not inclined to do that. Like even then when he kicks the field goal and then he kicks off to him, if you told me he went for it at the 2-yard line, I wouldn't have been critical of him. I wouldn't have. And they would have got stuffed. Then they kick the ball off and it's like, well, he doesn't even get close to the end zone. I'm just thinking, what if this guy ran it back? He didn't, but I'm just saying, like, it crossed my mind when he caught it at like the 7-yard line with 100%. A lot of space. I'm just like,
if you fail, you know where they're going to have the ball on the 1.
On the 1, and your defense can already kind of basically they can swarm. Your defense is fast. It's going to be hard for them to go 50 yards given who they're playing with. But that's just not the way he thinks. And I'm not the most conservative individual by nature in terms of like being aggressive with my life. So I don't relate to that well, especially when you have the advantage. Like, Kyle, you have the players. Like when some people yell, you know, the number of guys over the years have gotten mad when people don't go for it, like with the shitty teams. Like, well, they have the worst offense in the league. Their offensive line's awful. It's like, Kyle, you got a loaded gun here. So even if you miss, like, you're shooting hollow points here, buddy. And even when he tries to be aggressive, it's like, God, Kyle, you're running these fucking jailbreak screens just because it worked against Chicago. It's like you're making it so hard on Debo. I'd rather just have you hand the ball to him.
Or so I prefer.
He loves that. He loves that play way more than I do. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'd scrap the play, but I would kind of move on from it a little bit.
And then every once in a while, it'll just, if the throw's right, it can just be an automatic 8, and sometimes it's a touchdown. But I'm with you. I do think there is a part of this that is, I mean, a larger part of it, whatever the percentage is, 80% of it, that's just fundamentally who he is. I do think part of it is a general lack of trust in Jimmy Garoppolo, even though Jimmy made the throw that Garoppolo made to Ayuk on 3rd down and long was very good. I mean, he made some really good throws today. But I do think that part of it is
he's your quarterback, though, guy. You're in the boat with him. You don't
I
have a
get
choice.
it. But with a lead, trailing, whatever, like there is a fundamental one of this team's fundamental flaws, and we've talked about it for years, is that they can't strike quickly. They just generally don't. Right? I've been calling it the Princeton offense for years. It takes 7 things to go well: backdoor cut, good screen, good block on the backside, nice fundamental bounce pass, nice catch, layup, 2 feet, both feet, right hand, left hand. Like it takes all of this stuff consistently. That's not new with them, and that's not.
Well, the coach calls a lot of run plays on drives, so I mean that's slow. That takes some time, I would say.
Yeah, but
Jimmy's off.
But I think it's not debatable that they cannot strike quickly with any consistency. They don't get the ball down the field effectively, like 20 yards over the middle, over the top, 40 yards over the top. And I know people, oh, look at the yards per attempt. Yeah, I know. I see the throws. I watch the game. They don't put it over the top of anybody for the most part. They don't hit that throw. They tried like 3 times to Danny Gray. I haven't seen him in weeks.
Yeah.
Just gave up on it. Like that's over. That play doesn't work. Right? They gave up on it. They don't do that. They cannot consistently do it. They just can't.
Well, they hit Ayuk a couple times over the middle today on some explosive throws.
Yes, but I mean, those plays are different than the over-the-top throws that I'm talking about.
Yeah, but I'm not even asking for over the top.
No,
I'm just asking for like a 10-yard out.
This is a separate point from the point you're making. I think fundamentally what he wants to do and what he is what you're saying. But I do think we have to acknowledge that part of this is also they are offensively limited, because that is not a strength of Jimmy. It's not a strength of Jimmy Garoppolo. It is not a part of his game.
And they don't really have. I mean, Ayuk in theory could be. Debo's not. Kittle's a tight end. Juwan Jennings is not. They don't have a deep quote unquote threat. I would say a true, a guy that truly. I guess. I mean, I don't know. I would throw a ball. I would just call the plays. I mean, that's
but they don't. I mean, you and I watch practice. Like that's not Debo's not running go routes on people.
Well, no, not on Debo. But I'm just saying, I think Ayuk can run a go route. I do believe he could.
I would think. I mean, I bet if we watch his college tape, we'd see him.
He just doesn't call the play.
Yeah, I think he doesn't call the play because it doesn't work, because Jimmy doesn't hit it. Jimmy does other things well.
But the only way you know something doesn't work, the only way is if you run into game.
But
Not
I think
practice.
I'm pretty confident it doesn't work. I've seen Jimmy throw the deep ball over the top enough to know they don't hit it.
What about his rollout to Ray Ray?
That was one of the best plays of his life, I think. And I'm not seriously, like, it was an incredible. What does he make that play?
In that practice with the trainers, he used to work on that, remember?
Yeah, I guess you're right. That was a really strong throw.